Sure. Here's part 1 expanded into about 1,000 words, written in simple English, full of emotion and cinematic flow, with no violent or inappropriate content. Ethan Ward had lived most of his life on the quiet mining planet called Vereen 9. The world was dusty, filled with broken ships, lonely outposts, and travelers who came and went like passing storms. Ethan was a human engineer, not rich or famous, but hardworking and known for his honesty. He repaired old engines, cleaned rusted ship parts, and helped miners fix their broken machines. Life was simple, but it was also lonely. Every evening, Ethan would sit outside his workshop, watching the orange sky fade into deep purple. The stars above reminded him that the universe was full of mysteries, some beautiful, some painful. He often wondered if there was more to life than fixing things. One afternoon, as the twin suns burned hot in the sky, Ethan heard a loud crash echoing through the canyon. A small ship, badly damaged, had fallen not far from his workshop. Dust and smoke filled the air. Ethan ran toward the crash site and found a strange alien craft buried halfway into the sand. The door hissed open and a trembling alien merchant stumbled out, clutching his arm. "Please, help me," the alien gasped. His clothes were torn and his face was pale with fear. Ethan helped him sit under the shade and offered water. The merchant's ship was almost beyond repair. It looked like it had been through a storm of asteroids. "I can fix your ship," Ethan said after examining the damage. "But it'll take time. Maybe 2 days." The alien looked desperate. "I don't have credits." "No money left," he said weakly. "But I can pay you another way." Ethan frowned. "I don't need anything except fair work." The alien hesitated and then motioned toward the back of the ship. "Take her," he said quietly. Ethan followed him inside and stopped in surprise. Sitting quietly in the corner was a young alien woman with silver blue skin, long dark hair that shimmered faintly in the light, and golden eyes that seemed both tired and alert. She wore a simple cloth outfit and had thin metallic bands around her wrists. She looked peaceful, yet something about her felt powerful, like she didn't belong in that broken ship. "This is Lyra," the merchant said quickly. "She was captured during the war. She's quiet, obedient, and useful. Take her as payment." "She'll serve you." Ethan felt uneasy. "I'm not taking a person as payment," he said firmly. "That's not right." The merchant coughed and shook his head. "You don't understand, human. She's more valuable than gold. If you don't take her, she'll be lost." Ethan looked at Lyra. She wasn't afraid, she just stared at him calmly, her golden eyes steady and filled with something he couldn't name. It wasn't anger nor sadness. It was like she had already accepted her fate. After a long silence, Ethan sighed. "Fine," he said softly. "I'll take her, but not as property. She'll stay with me until we figure out what to do next." The merchant nodded quickly, grateful to escape his debt. Within hours, he took his repaired ship and vanished into the endless sky, leaving Ethan and Lyra standing outside the workshop under the fading sun. For a moment, neither spoke. The wind carried the sound of distant machines and the hum of the desert insects. Ethan turned to her. "You don't have to call me master or anything like that," he said awkwardly. "You can just stay here. Help around the place if you want." Lyra looked at him quietly and nodded once. Her voice was soft, almost musical when she spoke. "Thank you," she said simply. Days passed. Lyra didn't talk much, but she worked with quiet grace. She cleaned the tools, organized parts, and even helped Ethan repair old circuits. Her movements were careful and elegant, as if she had once been taught with discipline and pride. Ethan noticed the way she studied everything, machines, people, even the stars. She wasn't just curious, she was intelligent. Sometimes he caught her standing outside at night looking up at the sky as if she missed something far away. He wanted to ask her about it but didn't want to push. There was something mysterious about her, something that didn't match her quiet appearance. One evening while fixing a generator, Ethan saw a small pendant fall from Lyra's neck. It had a strange symbol etched in shining crystal. He picked it up carefully. "What's this?" he asked. Lyra quickly took it back, her golden eyes lowering. "It's a memory," she said softly. Ethan didn't ask again. But that night he couldn't stop thinking about it. The symbol looked like something royal or ancient, something not meant for a servant or a worker. The next morning, Ethan walked into the workshop and found Lyra already awake, preparing tools. She smiled faintly when she saw him. It was the first time he saw her smile, It was gentle and kind, but also sad. "You don't talk much," Ethan said with a small grin, trying to lighten the mood. "But you work better than half the people I've hired." Lyra's eyes sparkled for a moment. "Silence is easier," she said quietly. "Words can be dangerous." Ethan looked at her curiously. "You've seen danger before, haven't you?" She didn't answer. Instead, she looked at the distant horizon, where the suns were rising over the desert hills. "Once," she whispered, "I lived somewhere with light and music. But that world is gone now." Ethan didn't press her further. He knew pain when he heard it. In the days that followed, he began to notice more details. Her wrists, once covered by thin metal bands, showed faint markings, not scars, but patterns, almost like royal designs. Her language, when she spoke to herself, sounded refined and old, like it came from a noble tongue. He started to realize that Lyra was not what the merchant had claimed. She didn't carry herself like someone who had ever belonged to anyone. There was pride in her silence, strength in her calm, but she was also gentle. When stray creatures wandered near the workshop, she fed them. When Ethan struggled with heavy equipment, she offered quiet help. When he burned his hand fixing an engine, she placed her hand gently over his and whispered words that seemed to cool the pain instantly. She wasn't ordinary. Ethan knew that much now. That night, as he sat under the stars, Ethan thought about how strange life could be. One moment he was fixing ships. The next he was living with a mysterious alien woman who seemed to carry secrets bigger than the galaxy itself. He looked toward the small cabin where Lyra rested, her soft blue light visible through the window. Somehow he felt his life had changed forever, even though he didn't yet know why. He had accepted her because of a deal. But deep down he sensed she wasn't a slave at all. She was something more, something rare and hidden. And though Ethan didn't yet understand who she truly was, he already knew he would never let anyone treat her as less than human again. The winds of Varine 9 whispered across the sands that night, carrying with them the quiet beginning of a story that neither Ethan nor Lyra could have imagined. A story of trust, mystery, and the unseen worth of a soul. Would you like me to continue with part 2, expanded into around 1,000 words, in the same style, emotional, cinematic, and simple English? Of course, here's part 2 expanded into about 1,000 words, written in simple, emotional, and engaging English, with clean language and no violence. The days slowly turned into weeks, and the quiet life in Ethan's workshop began to change. It was no longer a lonely place filled only with the sound of machines. Now there was a soft presence that made everything feel different. Lyra moved like a gentle breeze through the small home, never loud, never hurried, but somehow always there when needed. Every morning she prepared simple meals before Ethan even woke up. She studied the tools, the machines, and the engines he worked on. At first, Ethan thought she was just curious, but soon he realized something surprising. She understood how things worked. Once, when a motor refused to start, she adjusted a small wire inside and it began humming again perfectly. Ethan looked at her, amazed. "How did you know that?" Lyra smiled faintly. "It was only loose," she said softly and went back to cleaning. But Ethan knew there was more to it. That kind of skill didn't come from watching. It came from knowledge, deep, practiced knowledge. One evening, while Ethan repaired a transport vehicle outside, Lyra sat nearby, sketching something in the dust with a metal rod. When Ethan looked closer, he saw she had drawn a star map, a pattern of constellations he had never seen before. "Those stars aren't from this system," he said, kneeling beside her. Lyra looked at her drawing for a moment, then erased it quickly with her hand. "They're from home," she whispered. Ethan paused. "Where's home?" She didn't answer. Her eyes glimmered like gold under the fading light, full of memories she didn't want to speak of. Ethan didn't ask again. He respected her silence, but curiosity began to grow inside him. Who was she, really? Every small thing she did raised more questions. She walked with a posture that reminded him of someone noble. Her words carried a calm confidence, and even when she was quiet, she seemed to command the space around her. Sometimes, miners or traders came to the workshop to get repairs done. They would glance at Lyra, whisper among themselves, and then quickly look away. Her beauty was different, peaceful, not loud. But it was her presence that caught attention. Ethan noticed that she never spoke to strangers, never looked them in the eye for long, and always kept her distance. One night, Ethan found her sitting outside, staring up at the sky. The air was cool and the stars stretched endlessly across the black horizon. "You're always watching the stars," he said gently, sitting beside her. "Do you miss your world that much?" Lyra nodded slowly. "There are things you don't forget," she said. "Even when everything is taken away, memories stay." Ethan turned to her. "The man who gave you to me, was he your owner?" Lyra shook her head. "No, he was only a trader. I was getting lost and he found me. To him I was just something to sell." Her voice stayed calm, but Ethan heard the pain beneath it. He frowned, trying to understand. "You don't talk about your family. Are they gone?" Lyra looked at him for a moment as if deciding whether to trust him. Then she said quietly, "Some of them. Others. I don't know." Her words were few, but they carried weight. Ethan wanted to help her, but he knew she wasn't ready to tell her story yet. So instead of questions, he offered kindness. "Here," he said, handing her a warm mug of tea. "You don't have to tell me anything. Just know you're safe here." For a second, Lyra's expression softened. "Safe," she repeated softly, as if testing the word. Then she smiled, a small, real smile, and that moment felt brighter than all the stars above them. Over time, the two fell into an easy rhythm. Ethan worked on machines during the day, and Lyra often joined him. She learned quickly, asking questions about human technology and tools. Sometimes she offered ideas that even surprised Ethan. Once, when he struggled to fix a power coil, she suggested reversing the energy flow instead of replacing the part. It worked perfectly. "Where did you learn all this?" Ethan asked, half joking. "You sure you weren't some kind of royal engineer or something?" Lyra's smile faded just slightly. "Something like that," she said softly, turning away. That night, Ethan noticed her sitting near the fire, holding her pendant again, the same crystal one he had seen before. The symbol on it seemed to shine faintly, reacting to the warmth. He couldn't read it, but it looked important. "Is that from your home?" he asked. "Yes," she replied simply. "It's the only piece left of who I was." Ethan wanted to ask what she meant, but something told him to wait. He felt that when she was ready, she would tell him everything. Weeks later, a group of off-world travelers arrived in the settlement. They came from far systems and spoke of wars, empires, and missing royal families. Ethan didn't pay much attention. Politics had never interested him. But he noticed that Lyra stayed inside the entire day, her eyes filled with worry. When the travelers left, Ethan found her packing her few belongings. "Where are you going?" he asked. "I don't want to bring trouble here," she said quietly. "It's safer if I leave." Ethan stepped closer, shaking his head. "You don't owe me anything, Lyra. You're not a problem here. You have a home now, even if it's just this workshop." For a moment, she stood still, looking at him with surprise. No one had ever spoken to her like that, with kindness, not demand. Her voice trembled slightly when she said, "You're a good man, Ethan Ward." He smiled gently. "I just try to be fair." That night, for the first time, Lyra told him a small piece of truth. "Long ago," she said quietly, "I lived in a place where people bowed when I entered a room. I wore silk instead of dust, but power can disappear faster than light." Ethan listened in silence. He didn't ask questions, though every part of him wanted to. He could feel that her story was heavy, maybe even dangerous. But he also knew something else. Lyra wasn't meant to be anyone's servant. She carried herself like someone who had lost everything yet still stood tall. As days passed, Ethan began to see how deeply she cared for others. When an injured miner came by, Lyra cleaned his wound with gentle hands. When the power failed in a neighbor's home, she stayed up all night with Ethan to help fix it. She never complained, never asked for thanks. Sometimes when Ethan looked at her working beside him, he thought about how strange fate was. A stranger had left her with him as payment, but she had become more like light in his quiet world. The workshop no longer felt empty. Still, one question never left his mind. Who was Lyra really? She wasn't an ordinary woman. She wasn't a servant. She was something more, something noble and hidden beneath silence. And although Ethan didn't yet know her secret, he felt it growing closer with each passing day, like the calm before a storm. At night, as the stars glittered across the wide Vereen sky, Lyra looked up again at the heavens, her golden eyes reflecting starlight. Somewhere out there, her true home waited, Somewhere beyond the dark, her past was calling. But for now, she stayed. And for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel alone. Would you like me to continue and expand part 3 next? In the same simple, cinematic, emotional tone, about 1,000 words. Of course. Here's part 3 expanded into about 1,000 words, written in simple, emotional, cinematic English, with no violent or inappropriate content, fully engaging and full of feeling. Time moved slowly on Vereen 9, but change was quietly approaching. The calm days that Ethan and Lyra shared were about to end, though neither of them knew it yet. One evening, the air on the desert planet felt different, heavier, filled with a quiet tension. The suns had set and the sky shimmered with the soft glow of 2 moons. Ethan sat by the workshop table, fixing an old communication device while Lyra organized tools. The sound of her soft footsteps and the gentle hum of the machine made the room feel peaceful. But that peace was broken when the communicator suddenly crackled to life. A strange voice came through, speaking in a language Ethan didn't understand. Lyra froze instantly. Her hands trembled slightly as she turned toward the sound. "What is it?" Ethan asked, looking up. She didn't answer. Instead, she walked slowly to the device and switched it off. Her golden eyes were filled with worry. "Someone is searching this area," she said quietly. "Someone dangerous," Ethan frowned. "What do they want?" Lyra hesitated. "Not what," she said softly. "Who?" The next morning, Ethan woke early to find Lyra already outside, standing on the ridge overlooking the canyon. The wind played with her dark hair as she watched the horizon. When he joined her, she finally spoke. "They are looking for me," she said simply. Ethan stared at her, unsure what to say. "Who are they, Lyra?" "You can tell me." She looked at him with a mix of fear and strength. "The ones who destroyed my home. They believe I'm dead, but now they've learned I'm still alive." Ethan's heart sank. "You mean you were part of something big?" Lyra nodded slowly. "I was born into the royal family of the Thryan Empire," she said softly. "My name is Lyra Thryan. I was the only daughter of the High Lord." Ethan blinked, trying to understand her words. "Royalty?" She nodded. "Yes, but I was never meant to rule. My father led a peaceful empire. Then one night everything changed. People I trusted turned against us. My family disappeared. I escaped because a loyal guard helped me, but I was captured later by traitors. They didn't know who I was, and I never told them. It was safer that way." Her voice was steady, but her eyes showed deep sadness. "I thought hiding on this quiet planet would keep me safe. But they found me again." Ethan sat in silence. Everything made sense now, the way she carried herself, her quiet strength, the symbol on her pendant. He realized he had been living beside a lost princess all this time. After a long pause, he asked gently, "What will you do now?" Lyra looked toward the desert horizon. "I don't know. If I stay, they will find me. If I leave, they might follow. Either way, I cannot let more people get hurt because of me." Ethan stood up, determination in his voice. "Then you're not going anywhere alone. We'll find a way to keep you safe." Lyra looked at him with surprise. "You would risk that for me?" He smiled faintly. "You're my friend, Lyra. You've been part of my life now. I'm not letting anyone take that away." She said nothing, but her eyes filled with quiet gratitude. That night they began preparing. Ethan checked his old ship, repaired engines, and packed supplies. Lyra helped him silently, her hands steady though her heart was heavy. The world around them seemed to hold its breath. Just before dawn, a strange light appeared in the sky, a distant glow slowly growing brighter. Ethan grabbed his scanner. "There's a ship coming in fast," he said. "Not one of the local traders." Lyra's face grew pale. "They found us." Ethan didn't panic. "We have to leave now." They rushed to the ship, the air filled with dust and wind. Lyra held her pendant tightly, whispering something in her native tongue. Ethan didn't understand the words, but he could feel the emotion in them, a prayer or maybe a farewell. They took off just as the strange ship entered the atmosphere. Through the window, Ethan saw flashes of bright light behind them. He pushed the controls, flying the old craft faster than it had flown in years. The engines roared, shaking the cabin, but Lyra sat calmly beside him. "Where should I go?" Ethan asked. "There's a hidden system," she said quickly, "beyond the Blue Nebula. My family had loyal friends there. If they're still alive, they can help." Ethan nodded and set the coordinates. As the stars stretched into long lines of light, Lyra closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. For the first time, she wasn't running from her past. She was heading toward it. Hours passed in quiet flight. Ethan could tell she was lost in thought, remembering a world long gone. To distract her, he asked softly, "What was your home like?" Lyra's face softened. It was full of gardens and rivers that glowed at night. My people believed in peace. My father said every life carried light within it. Her voice broke slightly. I didn't know how much I'd miss it until it was gone. Ethan listened silently. He couldn't imagine losing an entire world. After a long pause, Lyra turned to him. "You didn't have to help me," she said quietly. "Most would have handed me over for a reward." Ethan gave a small smile. "I didn't help you because of who you were, Lyra. I helped because of who you are." For the first time in days, she smiled back. It was small but warm. Their ship continued through the endless stars, but the journey was not easy. Energy levels dropped, and they had to stop at an abandoned moon base to repair. While Ethan worked on the power unit, Lyra explored the old corridors. There she found an ancient transmitter. When she touched it, the screen flickered to life, showing a faded royal seal. Her heart raced. "It's my father's code," she whispered. "Some of his loyalists are still alive." She quickly transmitted a message using a secret frequency known only to the royal family. Then she returned to help Ethan finish the repairs. When they took off again, Lyra's eyes were filled with hope for the first time in years. "If they receive my message," she said softly, "they'll know I'm alive. They'll come." Ethan looked at her with quiet admiration. She was not just a survivor, she was a leader, brave and kind even after all she had lost. As their ship disappeared into the blue shimmer of the nebula, Lyra turned to the stars and whispered, "Home is waiting." Ethan glanced at her, realizing something important. She had entered his life as a stranger, a quiet woman given to him as payment. But now she had become the heart of his journey, the reason he looked beyond his small world. And though he didn't know what awaited them on the other side of the nebula, he knew one thing for sure. Lyra was no longer hiding. She was ready to reclaim her destiny. Would you like me to continue and expand Part 4 next? 1,000 words, same cinematic and emotional style? Of course. Here's Part 4 expanded into about 1,000 words, written in simple, emotional, cinematic English full of feeling, adventure, and hope, with clean and family-friendly language throughout. The stars shimmered like diamonds as Ethan's old ship glided silently through the endless dark. The hum of the engines was the only sound. Inside the small cabin, Lyra sat beside him, her golden eyes focused on the swirling blue light of the nebula ahead. The glow painted her face softly, and for the first time since she had arrived in Ethan's life, there was calm in her expression. They had been traveling for hours, following coordinates she remembered from long ago. The blue nebula was beautiful but dangerous, a maze of charged clouds and magnetic storms. Ethan kept his hands tight on the controls. "You're sure this is the right way?" he asked, his tone half serious, half teasing. Lyra smiled faintly. "Yes. Beyond this nebula lies the moon of Serenth. It was once a refuge for my father's council. If anyone survived, they'll be there." Ethan nodded, trusting her completely. "Then that's where we'll go." The ship trembled as they entered the glowing mist. Light swirled around them in shades of sapphire and violet. Electric waves danced across the hull, lighting up the cockpit. For a moment it looked like they were flying through a dream. Lyra's gaze softened as she watched the beauty around them. "It's like flying through the heart of a star," she whispered. But the dream didn't last long. Suddenly warning lights flashed red across the dashboard. Ethan quickly checked the readings. "Magnetic pull's too strong. We're losing stability." Lyra placed a calm hand on his shoulder. "You can do this. Trust yourself." Her quiet confidence steadied him. Ethan adjusted the power flow, fighting the ship's shaking frame. The engines roared, then steadied again. They broke through the other side of the nebula in a burst of light and silence. Before them stretched a peaceful stretch of black space, and in the distance, a small silver moon. "There it is," Lyra said softly. "Serenth." The closer they got, the more Ethan could see. An old base hidden among the moon's craters, its faint lights still flickering. It looked abandoned but alive, like it was waiting for someone to return. They landed near the edge of the base, where the air shimmered faintly with a thin atmosphere. As they stepped outside, Ethan felt the cold wind against his skin. Lyra stood beside him, her long hair flowing gently. "I was here once," she said quietly. "I used to visit this place with my father. It was where we planned the future of our people." Inside the base, everything was silent. Dust floated in the air and the walls were covered in faint symbols of the Thryan Empire, her family's crest. Lyra touched one of the symbols gently, as if greeting an old friend. "This was our hope," she whispered. "Our safe place." They explored deeper, their footsteps echoing in the still corridors. Then suddenly a soft sound broke the silence, a small hum like a machine coming to life. A blue light flickered on one of the walls. Lyra's eyes widened. "It's the signal receiver," she said. "Someone answered my message." Ethan's heart lifted. "So your people are still out there?" "Yes," she said, smiling. "At least a few." A moment later, a holographic figure appeared before them, an older alien with gentle eyes and royal markings similar to Lyra's. His voice was soft, filled with emotion. "Princess Lyra, if you are seeing this, then our prayers were not in vain. We have waited for your return." Lyra covered her mouth, tears welling in her eyes. "It's Commander Talron," she whispered. "He was my father's most loyal friend." The hologram continued. "If you can reach the moon of Sarenth, activate the beacon, and we will come for you. The royal bloodline must rise again." When the message ended, silence filled the room once more. Lyra turned to Ethan, smiling through her tears. "They're coming," she said softly. "They still believe in me." Ethan felt a wave of happiness for her. "Then we'll wait. You'll be home soon." Days passed quietly on the moon. Ethan repaired the base's power grid, while Lyra reactivated the old communication tower. She worked with graceful skill, her movements confident and purposeful. Watching her, Ethan realized how much she had changed. She was no longer the quiet woman he had met in his workshop. She had become strong, filled with hope and courage again. At night, they would sit outside near the ship, watching the stars. Lyra often told him stories of her world, of the glowing rivers, the floating gardens, and her father's wisdom. Ethan listened, sometimes imagining the places she described. "You speak like you want to rebuild it," he said one evening. Lyra nodded. "I do. My people believed in peace and unity. I want to bring that back. Even if I have to start with nothing." Ethan smiled. "Then you're already doing it." Her eyes softened. "You've given me more than you know, Ethan. You gave me back my faith." Before he could reply, the sound of distant engines echoed across the sky. They both stood up quickly, looking toward the horizon. A fleet of sleek ships was descending through the clouds, their lights bright and steady. "They came," Lyra whispered. Ethan watched as the ships landed near the base. From one of them stepped a group of tall figures dressed in royal colors. The leader, an older alien with silver hair, approached and bowed deeply before Lyra. "Your Highness," he said with emotion, "we thought you were lost forever." Lyra's voice trembled. "I almost was, but someone helped me find my way back." She looked toward Ethan. The commander followed her gaze and smiled kindly. "Then the Thryan owe this human a great debt." Ethan shook his head. "You don't owe me anything. I just did what anyone would do." But Lyra stepped closer and said softly, "Not anyone, Ethan. Only someone with a good heart." They spent the night in the base, sharing news and memories. Lyra learned that many of her people had survived in hiding, waiting for her return. They believed her to be the true hope for restoring their peaceful world. As dawn broke over the silver moon, Lyra stood on the ridge beside Ethan. The ships behind them gleamed in the morning light. "It feels strange," she said quietly. "For so long I was running from who I was. Now I must become it again." Ethan nodded. "You were never running away, Lyra. You were just finding your way home." She smiled gently. "Home," she repeated. "Yes, maybe now I can finally rebuild it." A royal ship waited for her, ready to take her to her people. Before she boarded, Lyra turned to Ethan. "You could come with me," she said. "Help rebuild. You'd be welcome." Ethan smiled softly. "You don't need me there. You've got a whole world waiting for you. My place is still fixing ships and helping travelers." Lyra looked at him for a long moment. Then she stepped closer, placing her hand over his heart. "You've done more than fix ships, Ethan Ward. You've fixed what was broken inside me." He didn't know what to say. He simply nodded, his eyes warm with quiet pride. As she walked toward the royal ship, Ethan watched her go, the woman who had entered his life as a quiet stranger and now left as a queen. When the ship rose into the sky, the light shimmered over the silver sands, and Ethan felt something deep inside, not sadness, but peace. He turned toward his old ship and smiled. Somewhere in the stars, Lyra was finding her way home, and he knew without doubt that their paths would cross again someday. Would you like me to continue and expand Part 5 next? 1,000 words, same cinematic and emotional style. Of course. Here's Part 5 expanded in 1,000 words, written in simple, emotional, cinematic English, filled with heart, peace, and hope. Every moment is designed to stay engaging and family-friendly, avoiding all sensitive or inappropriate content. Months passed after Lyra's departure, but Ethan never forgot her. The days on his small outpost world went on as usual, fixing ships, helping travelers, and watching the stars at night. But something had changed inside him. He often caught himself staring at the sky, wondering which of those countless lights was hers. He had learned to live alone, but after meeting Lyra, silence no longer felt like peace. It felt like missing something important, like a part of his journey had gone ahead without him. Still, he didn't complain. He found meaning in the memories they shared. Sometimes he replayed her last words in his mind. "You fixed what was broken inside me." One evening, as the sun dipped below the red cliffs, Ethan sat outside his small workshop. The air was calm, filled with the hum of distant engines and the soft whir of desert winds. He was repairing a small communicator when a familiar sound broke through the static, a gentle chime, one he hadn't heard in months. He froze, eyes widening. The signal repeated, then a soft, calm voice came through. "Ethan, can you hear me?" He stood up immediately. "Lyra?" A quiet laugh came from the other end. "You still recognize my voice?" He smiled, his heart racing. "Hard to forget. Where are you?" "I'm safe," she said warmly. "My people have rebuilt part of our capital. The world is healing again. I wanted you to know that your faith wasn't wasted." Ethan leaned against the wall, closing his eyes. "I'm glad, Lyra. Truly. You deserve that." There was a pause, and then she said softly, "We've built something new. Something better. And I've told everyone about the human who refused to give up on me. You're known among us now, the one who carried the light when everything was dark." He chuckled quietly. "You're exaggerating." "No," she said. "I'm only telling the truth." They spoke for hours that night, about the stars, about how both their worlds were changing, and how strange it felt to find peace after so much pain. When the signal finally faded, Ethan stood there for a long time, staring at the horizon. Somehow, even across the vast emptiness of space, he didn't feel alone anymore. Days turned into weeks. The communicator stayed silent, but Ethan knew she was out there. He began receiving small packages from distant traders, pieces of alien metal, rare crystals, and letters sealed with the royal crest of Thryon. Lyra always wrote in short, thoughtful words. "We've rebuilt the gardens. Children are laughing again. I hope the stars still guide you." Her messages became the rhythm of his days. Each time he received one, he smiled. A quiet, proud smile, knowing that somewhere far away, she was building a better world. But one morning, something unexpected happened. A large shadow fell over his workshop. Ethan looked up to see a sleek silver ship landing nearby, far larger and newer than any he'd seen before. The engines hissed softly as the ramp lowered. Out stepped a group of royal guards in silver armor, and between them, Lyra. Ethan froze. For a moment, he thought he was dreaming. She looked different now, stronger, radiant, dressed in elegant armor lined with gold markings. Yet her eyes were the same. Gentle, bright, familiar. She smiled. "You didn't really think I'd forget you, did you?" He blinked, half laughing, half stunned. "I wasn't sure you'd come back." "I had to," she said, stepping closer. "You once stood by me when no one else did. Now I stand by you." The guards quietly returned to the ship, leaving them alone. Lyra looked around the small workshop, touching one of the half-built engines. "Still fixing ships?" she asked with a teasing smile. "Still keeping busy," he replied. "Keeps me out of trouble." Her laughter filled the quiet air, soft and warm. Then she turned serious. "Ethan, my people have begun to explore again. Not for war, but for peace. We're building new alliances, new friendships, and I need someone I can trust to guide them." He frowned slightly. "You mean, you want me to come with you?" Lyra nodded. "You've already proven that kindness and courage aren't limited to any one world. You helped me when I was lost. Now I want you to help others find their way." Ethan looked down, quiet for a moment. The thought of leaving his home, his workshop, his quiet life, it was a lot. But then he looked at her, at the calm strength in her eyes, the same look she had the night they escaped through the nebula. He realized that maybe his journey wasn't over after all. He smiled. "All right, Lyra. Let's see what the stars have for us this time." Her smile widened, glowing like sunlight after a long storm. "Then come. There's much to do." Together they boarded the silver ship. As it lifted off, Ethan looked down at the small world he'd called home for years. The rusty cliffs, the quiet workshop, the endless desert. It had been a place of peace and loneliness, but now it felt like the start of something bigger. The stars stretched before them once again, just like the first time they met, endless, bright, full of promise. Lyra stood beside him at the window. "Do you ever wonder," she asked softly, "why people from different worlds find each other?" Ethan thought for a moment, then smiled. "Maybe because some connections don't need a reason, they just happen." Lyra nodded slowly. "Then I'm glad ours did." Their ship traveled through the quiet dark, passing by planets glowing like lanterns in the distance. Everywhere they went, Lyra and Ethan worked together, helping colonies rebuild, settling disputes, sharing knowledge between species. The story of the alien princess and the human mechanic spread across the systems, a story of loyalty, trust, and hope. Years later, on a quiet planet surrounded by forests and rivers, Ethan stood on a balcony overlooking a city shining with life. Children of different worlds played together in the streets. Traders shared stories and laughter. The air was full of music and light. Lyra joined him, standing beside him as the sunset bathed the city in gold. "You see that?" she said softly. "This is what I dreamed of, a world without fear." Ethan smiled, resting his hands on the railing. "And you made it real." "We made it real," she corrected gently. "You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself." He turned to look at her. "And you gave me something to believe in too." The wind moved through the trees, carrying the soft sound of laughter and song. Above them, the stars began to appear, silent witnesses to everything they had been through. As the night fell, Lyra looked up at the sky. "Do you think the stars remember?" she asked. Ethan smiled. "They never forget." And as the two of them stood there, the alien queen and the human mechanic, the galaxy around them shone brighter, as if the universe itself was honoring their journey. Not as two different beings, but as two hearts that found hope in each other, and turned it into something greater than both, a peace that reached across worlds. The story of Ethan and Lyra became more than history. It became a legend whispered among travelers, a reminder that kindness can bridge any distance and that even in the darkest places light can always return. And far beyond the stars their friendship continued, timeless, endless, and true.